Hi everyone, and welcome to the webinar today. Today we're going to show you how you can connect Excel to SAP, Oracle, and Salesforce using Boardwalk. Today's speakers are Vivek Kumar. He is VP of the Boardwalk App Engine Group here at Boardwalk Tech, and then myself, Heather Harris, Manager of Marketing and Sales at Boardwalk Tech. So the way we've structured today's webinar is that we'll do a high-level overview to business object model. We'll talk about the Boardwalk value proposition and product offering, and then we'll go over the various spreadsheet processes that people in a variety of different industries use Boardwalk for, just to give you an idea of the scope of our work. Then we'll show you how Boardwalk works, jump into a live demo, and then save some time at the end for Q&A. So if you have any questions whatsoever, please submit them in the right-hand panel, and then I will get to them at the end of the session. I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, Vivek.
Thanks, Heather, and a very warm welcome to all of you, and a good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are. So we have a lot of ground to cover, so let's get started. So very quickly, one of the problems in integration is related to the fact that there are multiple business functions, and each of these business functions cater to very specific process needs. As many of you might be aware that each of these business functions has a object map model in the back end, and these object models are extremely optimized for serving the business function and not necessarily for the enterprise. Now, these are optimized primarily because every field which you bring it into your database has a cost associated with it. Certain fields could be important. Other fields could be needed, but they may not be equally important. Say, for example, there could be hundreds of attributes associated with your part number, part description, the hierarchy of the part, like your product category, product family, etc. And these attributes could be important in one function area. Say, for example, if you are doing a sales forecasting process, then your part number and part description could be important. But when you are going in for a new product introduction process, the approval flag can be a very important or a mandatory field in that particular business function model. Now, another attribute associated with these business function model is the fact that these models are highly normalized for transactions, and typically they are very high volume data collection processes. Again, these business object models, they serve the roles for different business functions, and they are created in a specific point in time. Now, because they are created in a specific point in time, typically they mirror the state of the technology at that point in time, and you may be able to extend it on and off, but you will never be able to basically remodel or redesign these business function models. Now, Excel workbook, typically we will talk about why business users use Excel when they are especially doing a lot of data extraction on when they're working with different business models. That Excel workbook provides business functions with a very model agnostic object model where people can define certain rows and columns depending on whatever process they are working on. Now, the next couple of slides I will talk about what are the characteristics of many of these business function models and how they either create certain issues when you are talking about integration or moving data from one system to another. Now, in this particular case, let us take, say, two business system A and business system B, and these can be any specific business processes. It could be a sales order process, it could be a purchasing order processing, or it could be a compliance process. Now, as I was mentioning earlier, each of these business processes have certain differences. So the first difference is what we call the provenance difference, which is when they were originating. And as I was mentioning earlier, depending on when they originated, they mirror the different state of the technologies. Many times in many organizations, especially in large organizations, you will have multiple systems in place. Sometimes they could be supplied by different vendors who are creating these business systems. The second difference would be what we call the runtime difference. And these runtime difference, some of the key attributes here are, say, for example, the different identities for the same information. Say, for example, In one system, you may call the part number, product ID. In another system, you may call the part number as, prod number. And, it becomes very important, hence, that the attribute names which are different, there is a mechanism to map it. And in addition to that, there are roles which are different in each of these different processes, and hence the authorization and authentication in each of these business systems will be different. The third could be what we call the locale difference. It could be that these two systems are located in two different geographies or sites, or they could be part of two different organizations. Say, for example, when you are doing a quote management process, one application could be residing in your manufacturer's enterprise, while other could be located within the enterprise itself. And what we are showing here, say, for example, the intersection of these two different systems is, which is the common interface, and that is typically, that becomes, the hand-holding mechanism by which you can port or pull information from one application to another. Now, moving on, as we were talking about the two business systems and typically how they differ. So the first difference is related to the object model, which are, normalized for specific transactions. The second difference is, again, as I was mentioning earlier, there are separate authentications for different business functions. They are created in different, specific time and reflect, the state of the technologies. And often, as I was mentioning, there could be two different processes which are existing at two different enterprises, one with your supplier or vendor, other within your organization's boundary. Now, the next slide here kind of captures how the data moves between these two different models. So the first could be that you have your business system A, you extract that information in some, integration space, which could be your staging mechanism, where once you extract the data, because that data was extremely normalized, you need to do certain ETL operation. You may need to add additional attributes to that particular data, and then you bring it into your, central data warehouse repository. And from here, typically, periodically, you can pull this data into, depending on, what is the objective or the goal of that integration, into another integration space. And from there, you can pull this information back into the second business system. Here it should be, business system B. Or, the other mechanism could be that you pull this information from business system A, you go into pull that information into that integration space, do your ETL operation here, and then you pull it into your second business system, which is your business system B. Now, diving a little deeper, so what is the typical role of the integration space? So the integration space, especially from the objective of integration or pulling or moving data from one system to another, it provides an intermediate storage for transformation of data as it is moving, so for example, the source system to the target system. Because the data typically in both the source as well as the target systems are extremely normalized, the integration space provides you with a mechanism to denormalize that data before you can move it. Thirdly, the integration space can either have its own ID or it can be ID independent. Other attributes associated with integration space is that many times it will provide you with time rationalization and effectivity. Say, for example, when you're talking about certain part numbers, the effective date in different systems could be very different. As I was mentioning earlier, the product, it could be called the product name in one system and it could be called part number in another system. So you need to provide mechanism for mapping and rationalization. There needs to be a ability where people can add additional input. Say, for example, certain attributes you want to add, which may not have been added in your source system. The ability to collaborate, say, for example, especially when you are working with larger teams with diverse, disparate teams, you need to have the ability where people can go into your, integration space, depending on what role you are playing. Certain specific attributes you can edit or collaborate on. Then it should also provide you with a quick, check on validation, etc., especially using certain formulas. And it should be available to everyone, irrespective of where you are located or what time space you are working on. So these are some of the characteristics of what we call the integration space or the staging area. Now, The next slide here captures in detail some of the specific characteristics associated with what we call an ideal integration space. So an ideal integration space should provide you with large data storage so that you are able to pull in massive amount of data from any of these systems. You should have a timestamp of all the integration runs. So for example, when you are pulling the information, you should know, when was the last time you had pulled the information, or if you want to see, over a specific period of time, what were the time horizons in which you had pulled information from system A or system B. That facility should be there. The third aspect is that it should only update, fields which have changed. It should not typically update everything or take an entire dump, because that way you will lose some of the additional information. Say, for example, what fields have changed, what necessitated that field change. You should be able to retain all values, historical as well as your current, so that you are able to do any kind of conflict, resolution based on, say, for example, if the field is getting updated and there are two different values for the same field for two different times, then you should be able to go back and say, hey, what made that value change, or who changed that value. Another aspect is the ability to collaborate for consensus. As I was mentioning earlier, the human intervention or user input should be required. It should be a neutral representation. It should be, as far as possible, model agnostic, because typically in the integration space, you will be pulling information from multiple systems, and you do not want it to be very tightly mapped to any of these systems. And then it should have access to certain key math functions so that you can do roll-up aggregation, deaggregation of data as required. Now this is where Boardwalk, with its patented technology, and we will talk about some aspects of Boardwalk in my subsequent slides, and we use Excel as our front end. So Boardwalk, relational and collaborative database model with Excel as a user interface, provides an ideal integration space. And these are some of the attributes. For example, first is Boardwalk has an industrial strength database which provides large data storage. Typically, we can, in the backend, it can either be an Oracle or a SQL database. The access to math function, typically, you can leverage many times the Excel's rich library of formulas. Boardwalk, because it is a cell version database, it only updates delta field. So rather than updating the entire dump, it only updates those fields or columns or rows or cells which have been changed since the last time you had pulled the information. Excel provides typically ability to intervene, where you can add certain additional attributes to your specific data or update certain attributes of the data. Boardwalk is also a collaboration engine, and we will again in the demo we will talk about this. So you are able to collaborate with multiple users using Boardwalk. Now, in addition to Boardwalk being a collaboration and a cell version database, we also have the ability to timestamp all the integration runs. So all the values which get updated, they get added with certain attributes like the time, and say, for example, from which system it got updated, or from which user or role it got updated. Excel is a neutral application which can have any model. In terms of, if you think about Excel, it's a coordinate geometry based system with a bunch of rows and columns, and you can model your process in Excel depending on what specific process you are running. And then because Boardwalk is a cell version database, it maintains all the values for conflict resolution in a central repository, which is the Boardwalk database itself. So just to kind of summarize, the ideal integration space typically must also support multiple formats. So for example, you can be pulling in information from disparate sources. One could be you can pulling certain information from an extracted flat file or a CSV file, or you could be pulling information from some relational table like a SQL table or an Oracle table. You may also need to have certain APIs connections to other applications. So for example, Salesforce or Oracle or SAP. So Boardwalk provides all these rich features and functionalities where you are able to connect to integration using the Boardwalk integration engine. So with this baseline set, let us very quickly dive into and get a little more familiarized with Boardwalk. So Boardwalk is basically, it's an application engine which is typically used to rapidly build enterprise applications. With Boardwalk, we are able to connect your process not only within your enterprise but also outside your enterprise, and we are able to connect it to different systems and sources. So, for example, in your template, you could be working in, say, a sales forecasting process or a quote management process where you need to pull in the product-related information, or you may need to pull in the pricing-related information. So, and these applications could be residing in some other application, and with Boardwalk, you are able to seamlessly pull that information either as a batch system or on demand, depending on whatever process-specific needs are. Now, these are some of our customer list. As you can see, our technology is being leveraged in multiple industries and verticals. We have organizations like PricewaterhouseCoopers, Wells Fargo in financial services domain. In consumer packaged good industry, we have companies like Coke, Welch's, etc. So the bottom line which I want you to take from this slide is we are absolutely process agnostic. We are industry and vertical agnostic. So any process which you can model in Excel, more or less you can leverage our product. And these again are some of the areas where Boardwalk is being used by some of the leading Fortune 500,000 companies. For example, we have an entire taxation engine built for PricewaterhouseCoopers. We are being used very heavily in Apple, especially in the areas of operations and supply chain planning. Apple incidentally has developed more than 10-12 applications in these areas. And again, here we are in most of these processes, we are pulling or pushing information from the enterprise ERP systems, from your CRM systems. Many times we extend outside the organization's boundary, where we are pulling information even from contract manufacturers or your vendors, etc. So again, as I was mentioning earlier, the last two slides kind of speaks to the broad range appeal of the platform. We are absolutely, as I was mentioning, industry, process, and agnostic in this. Now, we have been in business for over a decade now, and what we see is that organizations, even though they have state-of-the-art ERP CRM systems, still there are plethora of Excel-based processes which run in these organizations, and there are very good reasons why organizations continue to leverage Excel in many of these areas. Now, around till 3 to 5 years ago, there was this debate within organization which were many times privy to, where it was a replace versus embrace model, where people, especially the IT department, was thinking of whether to replace Excel-based processes or whether to embrace them because of some of the limitations which are inherent in these Excel-based processes. But since the last few years, we see that debate has been settled. People realize that Excel will continue to be an important part of information management system, and this is where Boardwalk, again with its patented technology, is able to help many of these Fortune 500,000 companies in mitigating many of the risks associated with it, filling some of the gaps which exist in these Excel-based processes, and making them enterprise quality in terms of their robustness, confidentiality, and things like that. So moving on, now let us very quickly dive into a little more detail about how our technology works. So typically, what I'm showing here at the right-hand side of my screen is one sample Boardwalk template, and this, as I was mentioning earlier, it can be any process. Let me call this, for example, a forecasting process, and this could be a sales rep template. On my left is another Boardwalk template, which I'm going to call the sales manager template. And typically, both these templates are connected to a Boardwalk database in the backend. Now, this database could either be hosted behind your organization's firewall, or it could be hosted on the cloud. Typically, almost 70% of our customers host it on the cloud. The remaining 30% choose to host it behind their organization's firewall, and that again can depend on the nature of the process, the confidentiality of the information, etc. Now, what happens is that with Boardwalk, as you can see, we are able to liberate the data from your Excel file, and so there could be, 10 million records which are existing in the database. You need not carry all that record in your Excel template when you start working with Boardwalk, and that gives you some straight benefits. For example, typically when we work with large organizations, we see that when people have, say, several 100,000 records in their Excel file, it takes several minutes to open the file. If there are certain, VLOOKUPs or other some formulas, and you change certain fields, even few cells in your Excel, it takes several minutes for the control to come back. So all the problems associated with large and bulky Excel workbook, typically we are able to eliminate that. And secondly, as you can see, because it is a relational database in the back end, we are able to slice and dice this information and present it to the end user in the form and the format in which it is required. So for example, if you look at the sales rep template here, you see that all the records belong to rep 1, while in the sales manager template, you see that not only rep 1 records are there, but other reps which are reporting to this particular manager, for example, rep 2, 3, and 4, those records are also present. Now, as I was mentioning earlier, that kind of adds to the security and confidentiality of information, especially when you are dealing with different teams and also sometimes with entities outside your organization. Right at the source, you can define who gets to see what rows, columns, cells, and what operations they can do on that. So, for example, if you look at, again, this template here, you see that there are certain columns which are grayed out. Now, these columns can become read-only for one user. It can become editable for another user, and it can be totally absent from a third user's template. Now, typically, once you have the Boardwalk template downloaded, another key differentiators between Boardwalk and many of the web-based solutions is that you can work in what we call in an offline mode. So you need not be connected to the internet, but still, just like a normal Excel file, you can open your template, make your changes, see what kind of impact it has. Say, for example, in this particular use case, the sales rep could be either traveling or sitting at a customer location where he or she may not have internet access, and they can change based on their discussion the pricing information, see what impact it has on the gross revenue or the total margin. And once they are comfortable with the change at that point in time, rather than emailing the file, they need to hit the submit button. So once the user hits the submit button, then only the delta cells which has been updated in the user template, it kind of flows into our database, and it is now available for other users. When they hit refresh, they can see those changes seamlessly flowing in. Now, as I was mentioning earlier, with Boardwalk, what is happening now is we are totally eliminating the need to email the files or upload the file on some document management system like Documentum and SharePoint. So all the users need to do is they used to hit this submit and refresh button, and now they are able to collaborate and see those changes as they are happening, or as people are updating that information. They will see those changes seamlessly flowing into their template. And just like we can pull information from other users, we can also pull information from other systems and applications. Now, in this case, it's quite possible that the opportunity detail is coming in, say, for example, from Salesforce, while the product-related information is coming in from your item master table in ERP, while your pricing information is coming in from Hyperion. And as these, values or the data is changing in different corners of your enterprise, with a push of a button now in your Excel template, you can see those changes seamlessly flowing in without the need to manually extract the files, without the need to manually intervene. All that happens in the back end, and that can be configured very easily using Boardwalk. In addition to that, we can also many times either you can leverage the analytics of Boardwalk, or depending again on your process need, you can publish many times the data in some reporting tool like Tableau, and leverage that for your data visualization, etc. So let us move on. Now, one of the key differentiators between Boardwalk and other applications is that Boardwalk is a cell version database, and what I mean by that is, for example, in any template, if you click on any cell and you hit your cell history button, you can see the value of that individual cell as it has changed over a period of time. So what you can see here is the fact that the initial value of the cell was 147,500. It got changed to 155,000, 165,000, and so on. And we not only capture the value updates, we also capture any formula changes. So if there are any formula which has been updated in your application or in your template, that can also be captured along with who has made that change. So you see here that the initial value was updated by admin, and the subsequent changes were done by the rep 1 user in this particular process. On top of that, we also captured the date and the timestamp. So you see that the value here as it was updated, when it was done, and if there were any comments which were associated with the change. So that provides you with a very complete, very detailed audit trail at the cell level of any changes which are taking place within your template. And now, just like these here are showing some of the changes done by the user, if there are integration where you are, say, for example, pulling your pricing information from Hyperion or opportunity details from Salesforce, those can also be very easily shown using the cell history or the row or a table history feature of Boardwalk. So now let us dive into a little more detail on the integration side of the technology. So this slide here kind of captures one of the sales forecasting process which we did for one of our customers. Now, as you can see, there are around 14 to 15 different integration points associated in this particular process. We were pulling in a lot of details, for example, the item related information from Oracle, backlog billing details, the actuals, the shipment information, all those information. In addition to that, information related to currency updates were being pulled. You can also see that we also integrated with, in this particular process, with Salesforce, where we were pulling information associated with the opportunity details for that forecasting process from the Salesforce application and rendering it into the different templates. Now, depending on what role you are playing, whether you are the sales rep or the sales ops or the demand planner, the same information could be aggregated or de-aggregated. For example, the demand planner would not see the information at its most granular, which could be at, say, the product number, customer number, month, etc. But they will be looking at it more from a geography consolidated or a warehouse consolidated kind of information. And finally, the final consensus number, we were again pushing it back into their Oracle system for it to move on to their supply planning side. Now, as I was mentioning earlier, Boardwalk has its own proprietary integration engine, which we call the sales, the super merge engine. Now, what I'm showing here, say for example, it can take any rectangular source of data, and it can then, we have certain features like you can bake in certain validations where you can say, hey, when you're pulling in, say for example, the employee related information, you can, depending on what process you are running, you can say that, hey, bring in only those records where the employee ID is, not blank, or, do not bring in those rows which have, duplicate employee ID. So you can define certain validation rules before you pull that information into Boardwalk. You can even do some amount of data cleansing because many times when you work with, large organizations, especially the data has been there for longer period of time, we see that there is a lot of dirty data. Now, we also have the ability to transform the data where you can, either depending on certain attributes, bifurcate or de-aggregate the data, or you can aggregate the data. There are also certain email notifications which can be sent depending on, what process requirements are. And you can then push that information into some kind of a target table or a target rectangle using our super merge tools. Now, this slide here kind of captures the different formats from which you can pull information. So the first, the top row kind of captures the information many times when you have the data or information existing in Excel spreadsheet. So you can, using our Excel merge feature, you can pull information from one Excel file into your Boardwalk template, and as I was mentioning earlier, you can apply certain validation rules, logic before you pull that information into your main template, and then you can finally push that information into another file as well. The second row there shows that there could be a text file or a CSV file from which you can pull information into the Boardwalk database, which is being shown here as a cuboid. And then again, you can move data from one cuboid to another cuboid. So for example, there could be a process in which you need a sales forecasting process where you are working with item related information. There could be a compliance process which also need item related information. Now you can have the same item master file which is populating both the compliance process as well as the sales forecasting process. We can also pull information from other SQL table into Boardwalk and then push that information back into any other application, or we can pull information from some other application into Boardwalk and back into another SQL table or any other relational database. So this kind of captures a whole range of options which are available to you for moving data from different sources, applications, depending on again what your requirements are. Now the next few slides kind of captures some of the work which we have done using integration and some of the reporting tools, where one model is, say for example, if you have your information in your Excel file, you can bring them into Boardwalk, and then using the super merge, you can periodically publish that data into some staging table in SQL or Oracle, and then from there you can again pull information from other data sources like Tableau, etc., and leverage this particular mechanism. Or many times what we can also do alternately is you pull the information from the Excel file into Boardwalk, and then you can also directly pull the information from your reporting tools which are existing into Boardwalk, do some kind of massaging of that data, some ETL operations, transformation of that data, and that can also be leveraged for reporting, etc. And these are some of the charts reports which you can either leverage the rich feature functionalities of Excel itself, or many times what you can also do is that you can leverage some of these reporting tools where you can pull information from the Boardwalk database periodically into your reporting tools, data warehouses, etc., for data visualization. So with this now, let us get into the next section of our presentation today, which is the live demo of the Boardwalk application engine itself. So let me now open a Boardwalk template. So what I'm showing here on my screen right now is one sample Boardwalk template. As you can see, this is a normal Excel file. And the way, say for example, that typically our templates are organized is that the first few rows is what we call is the header section, where you have some of your key buttons. For example, this is a submit button, which is used to publish the data from your template to the Boardwalk database. Then you have your refresh button, which is used to pull the information from the Boardwalk database into your template, and then you have some of your history buttons. For the purpose of today's demo, I have also pulled in one integration button here, which is like allowing the people to have ability to pull the information or run integration on demand. Many times these could be scheduled jobs which can run in the backend. Typically, say for example, if you're doing an item master integration, or say your currency related details, all those could be running in the backend either as a daily job, or it could run every few hours or every certain minutes, depending on how quickly you want the information into your template. Now you also see that in our template here, as I was mentioning earlier, there are additional checks and balances which are put in. So I have this template which I have downloaded. You see that I have logged in as the VP of North America. Now, as the VP of North America, I have access to different sub-regions within North America. And very quickly, I will show you when I download the template, the same data set using another role. You will see, how my access control will be limited. And then, there are certain sections of the template which, if I want to edit, I cannot edit. Now, in this particular case, you see that every opportunity is associated with multiple dimensions. So there are certain dimensions like the forecast quantity, the price, which could be user editable fields. Now there are other aspects, for example, the billing quantity, the backlog quantity. These could be coming in from ERP. And in my demo today, I will show you how when, say for example, the backlog quantity is updated in the backend from your ERP system, and when you run this integration here, how it can seamlessly flow into your template. So now, let me very quickly show you another template. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to download. So typically when a user gets initiated into Boardwalk, they need access to this initial Boardwalk template. As you can see, this is a shell file. It just has one sheet with it, with a few buttons like the download button, the logout, etc. And say for example, when you are trying to get people participating in any process, you can either email this shell file to them, or you can upload this file on some document management system like SharePoint, or even in your organization's portal. So all the user needs access to is this shell file. It is a self-contained file. We do not install any add-ins on user's machine. It has some of the details like which server it needs to connect to, etc., embedded in this file itself. So let me very quickly go ahead and show you how a user for the first time when they get initiated into Boardwalk, how they can start working with Boardwalk. So all the user needs to do is come here and click on this download template button. So once I go ahead and click on this download template button, it will run certain check on my machine, and it will check for some of the prerequisites which are required for Boardwalk to function. So for example, it will look out for internet connectivity. It will look out for some of the Office libraries which needs to be present. In my case, it is telling me that I'm good to download. So let me go ahead and click on this, continue to download. At that point in time, you see that a login screen has popped up. Many times what we do is we also enable single sign-on, etc., which can bypass this process, so we can connect to your Active Directory or your LDAP directory and use your enterprise authentication mechanism to authenticate the user. In this particular case, let me now go ahead and log in as the manager is. So if you recall, in the first template which I showed, I had logged in as the VP of North America, and then I had access to all the sub-regions. Here I'm logging in as the manager of East region, and let me go ahead and click OK. Now, depending on my login credential, it is hitting the Boardwalk server, looking at my access privileges, etc., and bringing in only those data sets which have been pre-authorized. Say for example, now it has successfully downloaded the template. You see that this time I have used the Power NA East login, which is the manager for East zone, and you see that in the sub-region here, I only have access to the East region data. I do not have access to that, and there could be additional attributes. Say for example, you can say that Heather should have access to within the East region only specific customers, and Vivek can have access to certain product group, product category. So you can bring in or bake in additional filtering mechanism on top of this to see, further define who gets to see what data. Now, in this particular case, now let me go ahead and say, for example, let me go and edit certain numbers. So I will go ahead and for the month of January is now almost it's done. So I will just change my number here for January. My initial forecast was 7,500, and I'm saying, hey, I was not able to maybe meet this number. I'm going to change this to 6,999. And as you can see, all the features, functionalities of Excel are intact here. As I was, there are certain formulas, there are dependent fields which are there. Once I have downloaded the template, just like a normal Excel file, I can go ahead and save this and start working on it. So once now I have changed this forecast number for the month of Jan, for the product P1 for the region East here. So I, as an end user, I'm going to go ahead now and submit my change. So what I'm going to do is based again, so I'm saying these are my final Jan forecast. So I'm providing some context as to why I updated my numbers for other users. And I have submitted my change now to the Boardwalk database. Now what I'm also going to do is I'm going to now simulate an update from my ERP system. So say for example, these are say just to kind of simulate an update which is happening in your ERP system, where your backlog quantity currently for the month of Jan for 2017 is 2055. I'm going to change this, say for example, to 5055. And let me go ahead and save this file. Typically, this change will have, it would have occurred based on your ERP system update. So this file would have been updated by your ERP extract, but I'm just simulating that. So once I go ahead and once I have saved this change, I will come here to my template and let me go ahead and run this integration field here. Now again, as I was mentioning, in our typical process, these are all automated scheduled jobs which run in the backend. So let me go ahead and hit this integration button here. So which is giving as an end user the capability to pull the data from, say for example, different systems into my template. It says that my integration is done. So I'll say okay. Now what I'm going to do is, so if you, just to kind of recap what I have done so far. So what I have done is I have updated using the North America or the manager East role. I have changed this information, updated the forecast number to 6,999, and I went into the backend, and in the backend I updated a file which is pulling in the backlog information from an ERP system, and I changed this to, say for example, 5,555 for the month of January for 2017 for this particular customer and this part number. So now let me go ahead and go into a different template. If you recall, the first template which I had opened, which was the North America VP role. Now in the VP role, if I come back to my file here, so let me first filter by the product P1, which was the file which was updated by the manager East. So if I come in here, if I look for the month of Jan, I still see the value of 7,500, and here in the actuals detail I still see 2,055 because I as the VP of North America, I have not yet refreshed my template. So now let us keep eye on these two cells when I hit the refresh button. So let me now go ahead and hit the refresh button here. So as I'm hitting the refresh button, now it is pulling all the changes which has happened since the last time I refreshed my template. Now it is telling me that my refresh is successful. So now let me go ahead and filter one more time based on the product P1, which was the product for which we had edited. So now if you see that of all the cells, it is telling me that these two cells have been updated. So you see that there are a red kind of corner tip here, which is, it becomes very handy, especially when I'm dealing with large amount of data. So I do not know, typically in absence of a product like Boardwalk, what value has been updated since the last time I refreshed my template. With Boardwalk, you are very easily and quickly you will be able to narrow down as to, hey, these are the two cells which have been updated since the last time I had refreshed. So this here, say for example, tells me that this value changed from 7,500 to 6,999. So if you recall, this is the forecast number or the forecast quantity which the Power NA East manager had changed. And if you look at the backlog quantity here, so this is the backlog quantity. And if you look at, say for example, for the month of Jan, you see that this value now has changed from 2,555 to 5,555, which got updated from the backend ERP system. Now, in addition to this, I can also very quickly say for example, click on any cell, or if you recall the cell history button. If I click on that cell and I hit on this cell history button here, I can see how far, I can choose how far back in time I want to go. So for example, I can choose a week, a month, a quarter. I can even give a custom time frame. So let me choose a week, and if I click OK, you see that it is telling me that in the last 1 week, the value of this particular cell has been updated 3 times. The initial change was done by the VP of North America, where this value was 9,999. Then it got updated to 7,500 by the manager East, and this is the change which I did during our demo right now, where I changed this number from 7,500 to 6,999. So this is using this login. I had made this change, and you can see the date and the time stamp of around 11:40 a.m. is the time when I made this change. And this is the comment which I entered, where I said, hey, these are the, say for example, my final Jan forecast. So it is at this level of granularity now that any change which is happening. So let me very quickly also show you the integration related change, the integration job change. So this is the field which got updated by the integration job. So now if I click on this cell, and if I click on the cell history button one more time, again I can choose, a month or quarter. So let me choose, say for example, past week. And if I click OK, you see that in the past 1 week, this cell has been updated so many times. And if I come back here, this is the last change which I did, where I changed this value of 2,055 to 5,055, and this was done by the because it's an integration job. I'm saying this is done by the admin, and you see that this happened at around 11:41 a.m. today. So now, as you can see, any updates either by individual user or by any system integration job which is running in the backend, that can be all captured, audit trailed, and tracked using Boardwalk. Now, I will move to another demo which shows you the integration between, say, for example, any application like Salesforce and your Excel template in Boardwalk. So let me very quickly close this. So now this is another file which I have kept open. Now in this particular file, as you can see, it has to do with a very different data model. Say for example, it is looking at some of the insurance market and it is calculating some of the additional coverages and premiums associated with that. Now there are certain opportunities which I am managing. So let me open the Salesforce piece here. So as you can see here, I have logged in into Salesforce. And these are the opportunity which, say, for example, I am managing. There are certain opportunity metadata information which I have captured here. And if I scroll down a little, you see that there are certain premium calculation which is again linked to my Excel file which I was showing a few minutes ago. And right now you can see, for example, in the contamination by refrigerant, the value here is 7,000, which is the same value which is showing here in my template. So let me go ahead and maybe change this to 100,000. And I'm just arbitrarily, I'm just changing this number. Once I change this number, I go ahead and I will submit this information. Now I have an option to enter. I'm going to bypass that, so it's an optional, so I'm just going to say okay. So what I have done is I have submitted my change to the Boardwalk server, where I, changed the some coverage amount, say from somewhere, 70, 80,000 to 100,000 in this particular case. Now what I'm going to do is, again, just for the purpose of this demo, typically what will happen is once I have submitted, there will be a backend job which will run in the backend, and these will not be actually done by the user, but just for our demo purposes, I'm going to now click this button here, which is going to push that information from the Boardwalk to some staging table. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this to the enterprise. So that it has now been exported successfully to that staging table. And from that staging table now, I'm going to publish it to the Salesforce. So I'm going to hit this button one more time. And now this data has been successfully published to the Salesforce. So what should happen is, if you recall, I have changed this limit to 100,000, and that changed the value here from, I believe, somewhere around some $7,000 odd to around $10,100. So let us go back to our Salesforce here. Now you see this value is still showing as 7,000, and that is because I have not yet refreshed my page. So let me go ahead and hit the refresh button here. Now once I refresh that page, now you see that this value has been updated to 10,100. This is the same value which is now there existing in my template now. And this is how, again, using Boardwalk, now you are seeing, and right now I'm showing a kind of pull from the Excel to the Salesforce, but the same, it can either be bidirectional, where any update which is happening in the Salesforce application or any of your ERP systems, it can be either pulled into your template, because the first use case, if you recall, where some update happened, the integration happened in your ERP table, and we were able to pull that information from that ERP system into the Boardwalk template. Here what I showed was I updated the value in our Excel template, and from here we were able to push this information or publish this information into Salesforce. And all that, that this can happen without any manual intervention, without any extract of information. So all you need to do is configure the integration rule once using our super merge integration engine. And once that is done, then from the end user perspective, you don't need to jump through multiple applications or files or open multiple data sources. All you can do is just hit the button of refresh, and you will see those changes either from other users or from other application and system seamlessly flowing into your template. So with this now, I think I have covered what I wanted to cover from the demo perspective. Let me very quickly cover some additional slides, and then we will open the sessions for Q&A. Now coming back to our presentation here. Now this slide here kind of very quickly captures the Boardwalk architecture. As you can see, the top section here, I'm showing the client environment. This is your typical standard Boardwalk template. You can either pull information from, if you recall, other Excel files using our Excel merge button. And the communication between your Excel template and the Boardwalk app server happens through HTTPS protocol. Our app server can either be Tomcat, WebSphere, etc. And it is in this layer that we manage access control, user authentication, etc. If you recall, last time I was mentioning that many times we can connect with your enterprise, identity servers like Active Directory, LDAP, etc., and pull user provisioning and authentication from your enterprise system into Boardwalk. Now, and then finally, this is the database here. What you see at the left-hand corner is the abstraction layer, which I'm showing here as the cuboid. Now, this is where the Boardwalk's IP is, where we not only keep the data in the Boardwalk server, we add certain additional dimensions to it. For example, the date and the time, or the time dimension, along with the user dimension. So if you remember who has updated that information. So we capture all that detail, and that in a way you can think of your data now, rather than being a two-dimensional table, it is now a three-dimensional cuboid, where apart from the value of the data, the user and the timestamp associated with any updates is also captured in the Boardwalk database. And at the bottom right of my screen here, I'm showing the Boardwalk integration framework, where you can pull information either from the SQL file, flat files, CSV files, other enterprise apps, custom-made apps, and pull that information into the Boardwalk server. And this slide here kind of captures some of the different features, functionalities of Boardwalk. The, the top row talks about the security aspects, where as I was mentioning, you can use single sign-on, SAML, etc. Using Boardwalk, you can be device independent. You can access the data either from your Windows machine, Mac machine, or even your mobile devices. Then we have certain designer tools. We not only use Excel as our user interface, we also use Excel as our designing tool, or what we call the universal template, where we use to model these processes. And then you have the enterprise connectivity here, where the integration piece, where you can either using the Boardwalk Supermerge engine integrate your data, or you can also leverage many of our APIs to connect to other systems. You can also use the Excel merge to port data from one application to another. And as I was mentioning earlier, we support both Oracle as well as Microsoft SQL. So with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause in here, and I'll hand over the session to Heather to see if she has any questions for us based on what you have seen so far.
Thanks, Vivek. We do have a few questions, and if I can't get to them by the end of the session due to time, I will email you right afterwards. The first question, Vivek, is how does Boardwalk integrate with planning modules of ERP like APO or Demantra?
So in many of our processes, we do integrate with several modules of ERP. As I was mentioning earlier, our integration engine is absolutely application agnostic. So depending on whatever application you have, many times if you want to do a direct table-to-table linkage, the only requirement is that it should be a relational database. Many times, in absence of that, we can even have mechanisms where you extract that information from your ERP system into some flat file or CSV file, or even in your Excel file, and use that as a intermediate file from where we can pull information. So we can either do a direct table-to-table linkage with ERP CRM systems, which many times some of the customers may not be very willing to do, or you can bring that data into some staging table, and we can pull that information from there.
Okay, and the next question would be, how can suppliers or vendors integrate with their Excel exports into the process template?
Sorry, Heather, could you repeat the question one more time?
How can suppliers or vendors integrate their Excel export into the process template?
So if I'm the question correctly, the question is how can some outside entities, like say for example the suppliers or vendors, they can integrate their data to the Boardwalk, say for example, process? So,
yes, I believe that's the question.
So typically, see there are multiple mechanisms through which you can do this integration. So one is, say for example, if your supplier or vendors, many times what we see in organizations that they either upload the file in some FTP server or email the file to the managers within these enterprise. So if that is the use case, then again, if the file is uploaded on some FTP server, Boardwalk can pull that information from that FTP server into the Boardwalk database, as long as there is some standard format like a flat file or a CSV file which is being used. In case their file, the data is there in an Excel file, we have this feature of Excel merge, where you can move data between two Excel workbooks using our proprietary tool of Excel merge. And again, this can either be done at the vendor location itself, if you extend that feature to the vendor, where you can give him this feature, where if he or she has that file and the Boardwalk template, from that file they can move that data into their Boardwalk template, and then push it into the Boardwalk server, just like I did. Once you have that in your template, when you hit the submit button, it will take that information. Or if you upload it in any of these earlier flat file systems, etc., we can again digest that flat file or CSV file and pull that information. And the third option, which typically most of the organizations do not use, but some of the clients we have taken that route, where we directly link up or sync up with their applications. So if that data is residing in some customer or vendor ERP system or vendor even inbuilt system, if they are ready to expose that table to us, we can even pull that information directly from those tables itself.
Okay, great. Thanks, Vivek. So I believe that's all we have time for. If you have any extra questions or if you would like any extra information on the Boardwalk App Engine, please email info@boardwalktech.com. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye-bye.